Welcome to IDGT902's Omega tier list. We know a lot of you have been asking about which Omegas are best. After a lot of testing and analysis, here is the list by tournament format. We hope it is helpful to you with your hunting decisions and tournament planning. This tier list is as of update 3.4. It is based on our opinion of these Omega creatures when they are being used with maximum boosts and most optimal training points for each format. Ludia created Omega creatures specifically for tournaments. So this tier list focuses on each rarity format and the best Omegas to use. The top 10 Omega creatures will be listed for each in no particular order. Note that each rarity includes hybrids and non-hybrids where applicable, and Carcharodontosaurus and Vectispinus are not included due to lack of testing. Best commons. We start with common rarity format. The top Omega creatures in this rarity are Masiakasaurus, Fukuiraptor, Olorodoton, Cryolophosaurus, Sinraptor, Megalania, Uteranus, Clever Girl, Stegoros, and Koreanosaurus. Probably about 1/3 of these Omega creatures that do well in common tournaments usually do not do well in other rarity formats. For example, this is Stegoros' time to shine. Commons is its best format. Stegoros won't be featured in any other rarity. Fukuiraptor and Uteranus would have dominated the common tournaments, but now they have a rival with Sinraptor, depending on turn, of course. Next we have rares. Best rares. In rare tournaments, the top Omega creatures are Homolocephali, Fukuiraptor, Toro, Cryolophosaurus, Olorodoton, Sinraptor, Uteranus, Ichthyovenator, Clever Girl, and Megalania. Rare is where Homolocephali has a chance to make a mark. It is usable but not that great in other formats. Homolocephali is good to swap in counter Clever Girl and Fukuiraptor in the rare tournament as well as win when there is a simultaneous swap to Ichthyovenator. Uteranus is one of the strongest Omega creatures here, and Cryolophosaurus is definitely an option now to help counter Uteranus. The rare tournaments outside of Uteranus are pretty balanced for Omegas. Unfortunately, however, most actual rare creatures cannot compete anymore. Best epics. Now we have the epic rarity format. In epic tournaments, the top Omega creatures are Clever Girl, Sinraptor, Mattel 93 Classic T-Rex, Radivates, Toro, Geosternbergia, Uteranus, Cryolophosaurus, Olorodoton, and Fukuiraptor. Radivates does surprisingly well in this format with being able to even counter Pulmonoscorpios and the Dimodactylus swap-in, which are two of the bigger epic creature threats. Geosternbergia is another Omega that gets added here with Gnawing Rampage being unlocked. With the introduction of Gigantspinosaurus, there are still quite a few epic creatures that can compete in this format. Creature leads dominate the epic rarity tournament. It is definitely pretty lead dependent. Best legendaries. Next is the legendary rarity. In these tournaments, the top Omega creatures are Sinraptor, Segnosaurus, Stegosaurus ungulatus, Geosternbergia, Mattel 93 Classic T-Rex, Clever Girl, Uteranus, Olorodoton, Fukuiraptor, and Cryolophosaurus. Legendary is one of the more fun formats for Omegas because it is pretty swap-heavy. The majority of creatures can be countered by another creature swapping into it. So even if you have the perfect lead in comparison to your opponent, they can still swap and be able to counter you. Notable mentions for legendary rarity are Ichthyovenator, Euxosaurus, and Megalania. Legendary format is open to more than just 10 possibilities, but these are, in our opinion, the best 10. Best uniques. Finally, we have the unique rarity. In these tournaments, the top Omega creatures are Olorodoton, Borealopelta, Sinraptor, Uteranus, Radivates, Clever Girl, Megalania, Geosternbergia, and Stegosaurus ungulatus. Omegas do not necessarily dominate the unique tournament like they do in the lower rarity ones. Some of these Omega creatures are listed only as a byproduct of being able to counter other Omegas. For instance, Geosternbergia. Borealopelta is not the best, but it has a really good revenge move and can do chip damage on creatures it cannot beat. But Stegosaurus ungulatus is much better. Radivates is not necessarily a top contender, but it can beat other Omega like Uteranus, Sinraptor, and Olorodoton, for instance. The top 3 that stick out the most for unique rarity are Stegosaurus ungulatus, Clever Girl, and Sinraptor. Not all of these Omegas here would get major play in unique format, but these are the best 10 to fit this meta. A brief note on Carcharodontosaurus and Vectispinus. We did not test these two creatures because 1, not many in the community have them unlocked, and 2, there was not much time for us to test them or see them being used in any rarity format. Biggest winners of the Omegas. These 4 Omega creatures are used in the most formats and are the most dominant. Stegosaurus ungulatus is great, but really doesn't open up until legendary and unique rarities, although still usable in epics. Olorotitan is the biggest winner, having excellent matchups in every format. Olorotitan is able to win most matchups outside of Mattel. 93 classic T-Rex in legendary up. Clever Girl is next. She's probably the most useful Omega, but has definitely gained more counters recently. Sinraptor and Yutyrannus are definitely 3rd and 4th most useful. Both fit well in all formats, with Yutyrannus falling off some in uniques. Biggest losers of the Omegas. These Omega creatures need to be better in any format. Sadly, Masiakasaurus, Diabloceratops, and Stegoros are the weakest of the bunch. Outside of commons, Masiakasaurus basically has one gimmick. It can trap usual fierce leads Mattel 93 classic T-Rex and Rexy. Yutyrannus and Sinraptor generally just run. With that said, its strike attack, Thievish Strike, leaves a lot to be desired. Fate is a good move and what allows it to beat those fierce creatures. But outside of those matchups, Masiakasaurus is sorely lacking. It can swap in and trap an opponent, but at 25% rend. Most creatures have some resistance to rend, so it is basically useless damage. To be honest, I've run Masiakasaurus a few times in the arena and never have been able to use Weakening, Decimate, and Run. This move should not be an act last move, and quite frankly, the move itself needs a rework too. Diabloceratops was one of the first Omegas introduced into Jurassic World Alive. Its only real issue is very low damage output. All this OG Omega needs is a higher base damage or a higher damage multiplier per training point. Stegoros is just... it has so much wrong with it. Its kit is weak, its stats are weak, it relies on RNG to kill things. All of Stegoros' unlockable moves are inferior compared to the rarity formats. This is why it only does well in common rarity tournaments. Stegoros needs a complete rework. Middle of the Omega Pack. These middle of the Omega Pack creatures can be an option in tournaments, but they are lacking in areas compared to each top 10. Australotitan doesn't really have an identity. It wants to be a fierce but has such low damage stats. It could be a resilient with the high HP and armor, but it rarely gets a chance to battle the cunning that it is meant to counter. Without an OE, it is pretty easy to play around, even with excellent resistances. With a counterattack, Australotitan increases its damage output some. But epics and legendary are generally a fierce meta. Overall, Australotitan is not bad and can do well in most formats. But usually after it is done with that one creature, it is easy to revenge kill. We would like to see regenerating alert dominance become a priority move, as well as distracting vulnerability, counter increased speed 10% for 2 turns, 2 attacks. Yuxosaurus would probably make the 11th spot in many formats, but suffer severely to stun and DOT. Yuxosaurus does extremely well though, once those are gone. Carcharodontosaurus is in a tough spot. The lack of stun resistance is its biggest downfall. We would also like to see Unstoppable Force do more, possibly bypass armor. As it is now, Carcharodontosaurus can get by, but very rarely is it winning any matchups, outside of a few cunning. I really want to like Carcharodontosaurus, but every time I have used it, it has left a lot to be desired. Thank you for watching. Take note, moving forward with each addition of new Omegas or other rarity new creatures in these tournament formats, it can drastically change the overall usage of creatures listed in this Omega tier list. So again, thank you for watching. We hope this Omega tier list has been helpful to you. Please let us know if you have any questions or feedback in the comments section below. Stay tuned here at IDGT902 YouTube for all your Jurassic World Alive content. Happy hunting and battling, everyone.